I'm still in this plateau.
I coded. Last time I coded was Wednesday morning for the passion project. I think I could put in maybe 2 to 3 hours tomorrow. I need to. Uh, yeah, like there's some like explorations with topics in Azure that I guess by default there's an expiration, and so trying to figure out why. Hey, how come this demo is not working? Right? When I say demo, like a demo to myself, and it's not working because a topic has been removed in Azure that had my courier information, right? So it can't load the courier app because the courier is no longer stored on the server
Hmm.
uh, to to re- that deals with messages going back and forth, like log on, and then a message goes, "Hey, the courier logged on. This is their location." Blah 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 blah. And so, I mean, thankfully, I got like a whole bunch of test scripts, so I can like figure it out. But then it leads to an edge case of, oh well, in production, in an event that for whatever reason, um, the courier doesn't exist for an Azure topic, but it exists on the client, like that probably should be handled. And so I was like, oh, I don't want to deal with this right now. So that's the reason why I haven't coded since Wednesday morning.
Yeesh. Yeah, I suppose is that for ad hoc queues they just tear them down after a certain period of time. I guess
By default, I mean there's you can set a flag for it to not do that. Um, I I mean I can understand the motivation because it costs, right? Every topic that you have, even if it is idle, it still costs. And so after like 3 years, 5 years, you may have a whole bunch of idle topics that were created programmatically that you just forgot about. And that might add another like depending on how many of those orphan topics there are that you're not using. I mean that could be an extra $10. That could be extra $50 a month, depending on like if you have hundreds or thousands of them. So I get it. Mm, I think I have insomnia, or is it acute insomnia? Acute means like recently, and chronic is like you've had a long history of it and it's probably not going to go away.
Well, yeah, that's what chronic is. I don't know if they use that for acute, for like onset type situations, because acute's more like sharp, or like you can have acute pain somewhere because it's very, very sharp.
Dear Google. Acute conditions are severe and sudden and on. Okay, that's what you said. This could describe anything from a broken bone to an asthma attack. A chronic condition, by contrast, is a long developing syndrome such as osteoporosis or asthma. Okay, yeah, I learned something.
So, oh, there is acute insomnia though. So you're right. It's short-term insomnia that can last a few days to a few weeks. It's the most common type of. Yeah. Okay.
It's going on. It's going on a couple weeks now. I think I've probably had maybe 10 hours of sleep in like the last 3 days. So.
Well, that sucks.
I mean, I'm functional, but yeah, something's not right.
Yeah, I've had trouble sleeping the last few days too. I find that the only way I can sleep is to actually go out and sleep on my couch for some reason.
That's what I've been doing. I've been doing that for like 2 weeks now.
Yeah. I don't know if it's for me. I don't know if it's because it's like right next to our big window and it's cold, so like my body temperature can drop easier there.
I,
But
st- I start off in the bed for like an hour, and then I'd be like, I'm going to the couch. I'm gonna fall asleep to YouTube. And I mean, that's the way I was raised too. I was raised to fall asleep in front of the television. That's my mom's fault. But we used to fall asleep to the movie Aliens. We used to fall asleep to the movie Predator. We used to fall asleep to Arachnophobia. All these like intense movies as a child, like we will fall asleep to them like every night. The same movie.
yeah, well, I suppose that those are they're horror films, but they're what would they be called, like thrillers or whatever?
Suspense or something.
Yeah, suspenseful. Yeah, Aliens especially is like a suspenseful film.
Yeah. So I'm like,
It's like takes forever to get to the actual scary parts.
yeah.
But
So I'm like 7, 8 years old, and consistently every night I see an alien like opening up the chest of some dude laying on the gurney and jumping out and jumping on people's faces.
every night you
And
see
I fall
that, you're
asleep
like, I
into
can
it.
sleep now. All I need to do is see an alien pop.
Or
I'm ready to go.
the transparent predator jumping off of a tree branch and shanking Carl Weathers with his fork attached to his wrist, the
Mhm.
predator thing. Yeah, man. I need to see a psych again. Uh,
Yeah, I don't know. I went to the gym Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or no, yesterday I didn't go. I starting to feel bad. Just not feeling all that good. So I just didn't have it in me yesterday. Probably just being a little bitch or whatever. But
yeah, I was gonna say, what would Goggins say?
yeah, stay hard. God damn it. I was supposed to do a 3 mile run yesterday, and I got done with taekwondo, and I don't know. Just, ugh. Also, I'm doing like, you ever do spikes for like work, like technical
Uh,
spikes or architectural spikes or
Rarely, but yeah.
something where you're not really producing anything. You're just trying to like understand things and document things. I swear every time I get one, like I want to have a mental breakdown or have a mental breakdown during it. Like those things are
Why? Because it's
extremely
not familiar.
stressful. No, it's I think it's because it's just so open ended. There's just like I think like I can take something and I can like expand upon it in a million different directions and think about all of these interconnected things. So keeping it's just overwhelming, I think is what it is. So I always
And
have like panic attack whenever I freaking do one of these stupid things.
yeah, that's why. Is it the F-35? What's the name of that plane? I thought it was the F-35. I thought it was like F-35 Lightning or something. What's the name of that plane that is like 4 times over budget?
So
Costs like
F-22 Raptor. Is that it?
no, the 22 has been out for like more than 20 years. I thought it was F-35 Lightning or something.
Uh,
Yeah, it's F-35. So I mentioned that. Yeah, so it goes 1,200 miles an hour cruising speed. It looks like they're a stealth fighter jet, but that program, I mean, it has to be waterfall, right? You have to know the entire. I would think in aerospace, period. I understand that's aeronautical, but if aeronautical engineering, aerospace engineering, uh, aviation engineering. No, it's aeronautical. Okay, so aeronautical engineering, avionics, whatever you want to call that stuff, aerospace. Like
mhm.
you have to consider that entire domain, and I almost called it business domain, but it's not. It's not really business domain. I mean, you could say that the fighter jet. I mean, you could say the fighter pilot is an actor, but it's. I mean, he has business cases. The business of like killing or disabling. But I'm going off on a tangent because I feel like it literally takes a decade or probably half a decade at least just to capture 80% of the details in regards to gravity, in regards to materials, in regards to edge cases. I don't know. What do you think? I kind of stole your thunder, but
No, yeah, I mean it's
hey, gambler.
probably quite intense to design all that. A lot of like safety stuff too that we don't have to deal with in normal
No,
course of
I don't deal with
engineering.
safety, but I deal with regulations. I enjoy fintech. Uh, People trip on me because I still use F sharp, and I'm like, no, 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 don't look at it as F sharp. Look at it as pseudocode, so I could get the pressure off me because it's a C sharp only shop. Even though I'm the architect, but whatever. No,
Yeah.
but I mean, to your point, like, so when I'm like prototyping or writing out pseudocode to try to figure out things, like F sharp syntax, man, it's a lot more concise and it sticks. More of it can, or it's information dense, and more of it can stick to one file to look at versus C sharp and having to tab through all these different files, 10 files compared to one file.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't the more I work with C sharp, the less I put things in all in their own one file. I think it's pointless. Like I put a lot of stuff in. I try to like name modules now, like with a instead of it being like a object name or a class name or whatever, it's like a I try to name it like a concern name or something like that, and put a bunch of crap in there rather than just one thing. It's so pointless to like. Why do we do that? I don't understand why we do that. Why did it
What
become like one
nouns?
file? No, why did it become like one file per class in C sharp? Like, where did that come from? Like, why did that end up as like the standard that people tend to follow?
My first thought is for discoverability, I would think. Like you're trying to navigate to a class and maybe you don't use Control Shift F and just type in the name because you'll get too many hits. I honestly don't know.
It's probably something related to Java. I bet Java did something stupid that needed that, and then that's where it came
I
from.
mean,
Because
C sharp derived from it, so that probably
yeah,
makes sense. Java is
yeah,
worse than C sharp because it forces the one file per one public class convention. And oh, okay, so Gambler,
that's where it came from. Stupid Java. That's got to be what it's from then.
let me correct your statement. Stupid Java developers. I'll
Yeah.
cut sheet for that. I remember I'll call heat for saying something like that like 2 3 years ago. Like
So I was
just
gonna say
because you
like
learn just
right.
because you learned F sharp, now you're elite and you treat people bad. And like I was joking. Calm down, man. Grow some nuts. Ugh.
Like I like writing C code. You would structure it a lot closer probably the way that you structure F sharp code because it's you build a module of
Yeah, your header
related
files.
things. Yeah, you put related functions that all are they're really sub procedures or subroutines in C, but and there's some functions obviously, but you put
So
those all in
doesn't
one file and
so
yeah,
don't records kind of like change things in C sharp?
I think
Rec-
so.
records are more concise, right?
Yeah, you know what I don't understand about C sharp is why don't they give the same concise syntax for classes though? Like what was the
Because
because
it's
you
too late. That's why they have records now.
no, because records are just syntactical sugar over classes or structs anyways. But why don't they?
Yeah.
Why can't you do public class, whatever, and then give it a name, and then give it like properties inline, like just like a record?
So
If
that was
you,
part of
yeah,
Scott Blashen's talk. The name of his slide deck was called C Sharp Lite,
yeah,
and the premise was no, the next version of C Sharp is going to support the following syntax or shortcuts. And he was within the animation of each like slide. It's like, oh shoot, wow, that's cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, why do we have to add all the scaffolding? And then at the end, it's like, but you don't have to wait. It's out here now. C Sharp Lite is out here today. It's available. It's called F Sharp, right? And so, you haven't seen that slide?
hmm? No, probably
I'll
not.
send it to you.
But
I mean, he presented it really well, but
yeah,
obviously you're
well,
talking about like, no, C Sharp, C Sharp. But
well, yeah, because it's yeah, people understand the idioms, uh, and we don't have to put modules in dependency order. That drives me nuts. I
so
get it, but I don't.
so what do you? Here we go. So what do you do with your C Sharp files? Like, do you have you say public static class, some domain, or like public static class operations, and then you have like within braces public static method, some arbitrary operation one, some arbitrary operation two. Do you like that type of style?
Sometimes I'll do static classes and static if I'm doing like a function library, but
Oh, I do that almost 90. I do that like 95% of the time in C sharp,
yeah.
unless I'm forced to, unless some third-party framework is constraining me to really do object-oriented programming.
Yeah, the big ones for me that I don't like doing like multiple files for are things like putting controllers and DTOs that are really
There you
just
go.
defined for those APIs, like in separate, not only separate files, but completely separate namespaces. Um, and then like putting, if you have like a service class and you have an interface that's pretty much there for mostly to just facilitate testing and stuff like that, putting those in separate files, I don't like see the point of that. For the most part, I mean, there might be cases where it makes sense to create like an abstractions folder, but or a namespace, but like for most of the code, you wouldn't even want an interface here. It's just you need one for dependency injection support for testing. So like putting that stuff, if I'm doing like using Mediator or whatever, I'll put all of the request response and command handler module or code all in one file. So I still break it up probably more than other people do, but I don't know. I just don't see the point of the whole like limiting it to a class. But I guess if it's a holdover from Java, it makes total sense. So
Well, you choose your language, you choose your community. I
yeah,
think that's true.
I think the C# community is coming around though to not being so like
Enterprisey.
yeah, not being so stuck on one file per or one object or class per file or whatever. One declaration. I don't know, it just seems stupid.
I don't know. That's kind of the things. Those are some of the things that I'm challenged with. Like because I've been through it before. Like I want to give developers autonomy to be expressive and solve solutions the way that they would like to solve them, as long as it's a solution and it's testable and it's maintainable. Um, but like within the enterprise organization, they want standardization, right? They want conventions. They want things that have the same look and feel and not feel like different software shops all within the same business or
Yeah.
organization. I'm not. I'm not sure how valuable those benefits are. Like, I think everybody agrees that there's value in exploring other ways of delivering the same solution or other ways of delivering a solution for a particular problem. I'm not sure if there's really that much return on investment for standardizing on folder structures and namespace conventions, and I'm not convinced.
Yeah. I mean,
I,
there's
I
a
I
couple.
understand the motivation, but I don't think there's really a significant return on those discussions and on that documentation that provides that type of guidance on thou shall blah blah blah.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's. It's hard to know what there's studies for and what has been proven, what hasn't, and then what the nature of the studies were, and whether they're actually applicable to what you could what's conclusions you can derive from them. I say the same thing about unit testing. I don't like
Yeah,
at that low level.
we're about to go 20-minute conversation
No,
on
it's the same thing though. It's like what I get a lot of anecdotal evidence. I get a lot of like people saying that it helps them in a personal development process.
yeah.
I don't like, shops say that, oh, because we have these types of tests we can do XYZ. I just like is there like do we know the cost of doing it, and there is a cost to it. People say it reduces costs, but there is a cost to doing it. There's a cost to maintaining it. There's a cost to thinking about it and structuring it that way. Has that actually been proven to be at a holistic level valuable?
Let me try to rephrase that. Has it been academically proven that it reduces the cost of shipping?
Yeah, sure. And long-term maintenance and
What?
ownership. I mean,
So, I mean, every software project is a custom project. So,
yeah,
how do you really measure it like scientifically? You're dealing with some cowboy developers. They may be a subset, but you're dealing with personalities that, or in a field that even if it's regulated, it's still expressive, right? Like developers express their thoughts onto an editor, and I mean, real talk, and I think you would agree that some developers really should write some automated tests, and a lot of them, right? Other developers, they don't need as many based on their experience and based on some of the rituals that that is productive for them, right? I don't think you can really demonstrate. It's kind of I'm pretty ignorant in regards to Scrum implementation, but I feel the same way about pointing. you you have like these numeric values that are supposed to reflect the complexity
yeah,
that's borderline associated to effort, and you're trying to take all these different reference points of other custom components that you wrote code for, and you're trying to use that
yeah,
for a new custom component. And I don't think it maps, but I haven't invested, I really haven't invested on my personal time reading books and practicing on my personal time Scrum.
Yeah, if you
I have
actually, so like I went to a conference talk where they did present hard evidence on estimates because this was a no estimates talk and using pointing to discover like velocity, and they found with data to back it up that simply counting stories was a more effective way to determine how much like velocity you have, like versus points. Like it's more accurate to say that our team finishes 13 stories per sprint than it is to say we finish 58 points per sprint or something like that. And what I took away from that talk at the end of it was that so much about the no estimates move it isn't about no estimates about it's really about like actually being able to give realistic estimates for things and to know what your capacity really is. So like the practices that they were espousing were like we try to get every story to be the exact every ticket or whatever to be the exact same size. Like that's our primary goal. And then what we can do is if we can get every story get down to about the same unit of work, then we can literally just count stories. If we could take a problem, decompose it into all of these specifically sized stories, we can give you an accurate estimate about based on our team's story per sprint velocity, how fast we can get this accomplished in. So a lot of what they suppose is actually spending more time breaking down problems and understanding problems and putting them into bite-sized units that are actually measured against in terms of velocity.
and
Because like
then
everybody's like, oh, we need this stuff to measure to get velocity and whatever, but it's like it's not at all like scientific. And I think a lot of times velocity holds you back because people are like, oh, we over committed the sprint. It's like, no, you didn't. Every sprint should fail half the time. That's how an average works.
that reminds me of something that I used to repeat of my late mentor, and it amazes me how many people disagree with me. I say half of Earth's population, in regards to people, are below average intelligence. 90% of people argue like, nah, it's probably like it's probably like 20%.
No,
um,
it's about 49.99999%,
yeah,
right? It has
yeah.
to be. This
Like, and
it's
like,
it's a
like
logical like
80, 90% of people debate me on that, and I'm like,
well, I suppose if you could skew
there's no skewing. It's you take everybody, you measure their whatever. If IQ is used for measuring, which I don't fully understand or agree with, you take all that, you take the average, and you have 50% of people that are above that average and 50% of people that are below that average. That's what
yeah,
average is.
yeah, but
Like,
yeah, but it's not exact, right? Because you could imagine a sample set where you had 100, let's say 99 people with the same IQ, the exact same IQ. They're all exactly identically smart. And you have one person who has like, a low IQ. That skews everything, and you can't say that 50% of people are above average or below average. They're all below average at that point.
the example that you gave, but the reality is like
Yeah, I'm done with
no I
that.
no I
Yeah,
no IQ is going to be identical, and I would think that it would be a spectrum. To me, someone's intelligence is based on their past. Part of it is based on their past experiences and what they've learned from it, right? And we all don't share the same past experiences. We all don't share the same teachers in life, and we all don't. Some of us think in images, others think in other patterns, and so the statement you said is true in theory, but in reality, it's a spectrum of.
yeah,
I think IQs aren't integers. I think they're like doubles.
yeah. No, it makes sense. And if you average it out, I mean, it should be that 50% of people are below the average. on this big curve, unless, like you said, people were more the same than we think. But
So something that I've consistently struggled with, at least for the last 6 years, Conway's law is a powerful force, right? And it's related to what we were talking about in regards to like pointing and stuff, and the F-35 Lightning, right? Like how much time it takes to really model things out or really plan things out before a massive effort to build it. And what I consistently run into, because I consistently run into with almost every organization, is they 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 plan out the product, right, that they want to ship and get results on, get feedback on, but it's usually just a whole bunch of developers that are just waiting, and it's kind of a big bang where like you feel this pressure to get all of the developers working on this project versus designing a plan for how developers are going to eventually be a part of this project. I have yet to figure out how to solve that, right? Because the way that organizations are structured or organized or constrained, they have to demonstrate why they're relevant to the business. And so that, and it ends up affecting how a project is, it affects it affects the fact in most cases that projects aren't, a lot of projects I think aren't properly designed around the product or the service itself. It's designed around the teams that are going to work on it, and that's the project, right? That's how the project is. That's what influences the project the most is the teams that are going to be a big bang, and somehow they assemble into it all at the same time versus deconstructing or whatever that word is, what this actual domain is of this project and having a phased approach because there are dependencies, right? Like sometimes you can't work on this part of the solution or project until you have these two parts done, right? But a lot of the model that I tend to see a lot across organizations is, well, we got to figure out what they're going to work on. I get
yeah,
it. I get it, but that's not in tune with
yeah,
the product that we need to build. Like, let's revolve it around the product's needs and not the budget being burned out. Or what's the term? What's it? Is it called what's something burned? What's that thing called?
burn down or what? Like what? Project burn?
When a project is funded and the
Burn rate?
burn rate, yeah. I'm curious what your thoughts are. I mean, I suck at trying to articulate that, but it's something I deal with so many times, and I'm surprised that the mainstream way that we have is the de facto standard.
So there's a lot to unpack there. One thing you did point out or you said that I wildly disagree with is the idea that dependencies have to be in place for you to do development in another area. I think that's a completely false idea. You need to understand the protocol that you're going to use to talk to the dependency, like the actual like structure of the models, the expectations. You need to have like a contract. But once you have a contract in place, you can develop software without a dependency. being there because we have the capability to mock and to build around a spec, right? You do that all the time. So I hate that people think that that's needed, because there's plenty of times where I'm like, I can work on this right now. We can build this entire thing, put a toggle in place to keep it out of the actual system, and then when we get their dependency in place, when they're done, we just need to turn it on and iron out the problems. That's it. Like, that's how much work will be left. It's like, people don't think in that way. They think that you have to do A and then B and then C, when you can really do C, A, B, and get away with it if you're smart about the way that you talk about things.
I
But
agree with you. Just, I'm curious what your thoughts are on. Well, you stated it right, that, well, first you have to plan and you have to understand the domain of that subsystem or that component, right? And sometimes, especially at an architecture level, sometimes you're constrained to just map that specific subsystem out first before you can map out all the other components of that system, right? But meanwhile, you still have pressure from the business or stakeholders that, hey, these developers are sitting on their hands. What do you have for us? What can we work on? And it's like, so now, like, one may feel pressure to like try to create busy work when really you're still trying to design this one component versus doing round robin, and you have 6 components that make up the system, and you're doing a vertical slice throughout your day, uh, attacking all 6 subsystems. Like, I don't think that's going to work, and I think it's not the right way. So I'm curious what other options are there when ultimately you're doing discovery and you need to have a plan. In order to have a plan, you need to investigate, prototype, and have something to hand off to developers.
well, I mean, you need to have a high level plan. People should be able to. I think developers should be able to extrapolate or to build upon the understanding of a high level plan, and to put abstractions in place to say, well, maybe this isn't even going to be the exact way that they're going to represent things, but within our system, it makes sense to represent it this way. So I'll just put a mapping layer in here,
Yep.
and wait for that contracted to be defined, but to understand that this is the capability it's going to provide me, or this is the data that's going to provide me. Developers should be able to just know what their component is going to do at a high level and build it out, and that's something that I'm more than capable of doing, and developers should be able to. But I don't think project management thinks that way. They think ABC.
Build it out to what?
Build it out to just get the work in
Spec.
place. Well, no, you
No?
can build it out to. You don't necessarily have to have the spec in play. It depends on what pieces you're building, right? If you're building a UI to something,
You're building a backend service that needs to comply with a regulated industry or space.
okay, so there's one team working on that. All right.
Okay.
So then what? You said that it has dependencies. Are other teams working on that dependency? Is
No.
it something you need to buy?
It's something that, okay, so let me scale it back some. Why, and this is good, right? Because
Yeah.
like I'm looking for insight. So, and I'll start it off with a question, like, what is the purpose of an architect? Or what are one of the requirements of an architect?
Yeah.
It's not rhetorical, it's a question.
Oh,
Hey, see you, Gambler.
what's it's to structure out. To me, an architect handles the or is supposed to focus on non-functional requirements, but that's my opinion of what an architect's purpose is. But
Okay.
a specialist in non-functional requirements.
If someone were to ask me, I would say that one of the functions of an architect is to have a a bird's eye view of the entire solution and and all the relationships that are involved in order for that solution to be in production and generate money or whatever. Um, the second part is for there to be a visionary, a technical visionary of how this is going to satisfy business objectives. All right. So, like, if those two are true, if those two statements are true or accurate enough, if a single individual is responsible for mapping all this out in regards to a blueprint and dealing with edge cases or whatever as much as possible, sooner or later, like you're not going to get everything accounted for. Like sooner, and hence, I do believe in artificial deadlines, right? But the challenge is, how do you, with the burn rate of people that are currently on payroll that don't have any work to do, right? But you still need to figure out the the plan of how things are going to align. Like I guess that's something that's challenging, um, that I need to spend more time investigating.
Yeah. The other big question, are these project teams or are they product teams? Because um, one of the things like that our my organization is doing right now and makes absolute sense to me is that we have we have, instead of defining like a big project, what we have is we've got like pillars of projects or pillars of related work with a priority on them, but we don't have but it's not so it's like this is the first type of thing. Any work in this bucket you prioritize above work in this bucket, which prioritized work above this bucket. So what happens if you don't have anything in bucket 1 to do, you go to bucket 2. If you don't have anything in bucket 2 to do, you go to bucket 3. If you don't have anything in bucket 3 to do, you go to bucket 4. And eventually you're going to find something to work on to keep you busy, so that you're not just spinning cycles waiting for work in pillar 1 to become available or bucket 1 to become available. Which the last gig I had was very much more like what you're describing. Is we do say like safe, and what would happen is you'd have some 2 or 3 big initiatives for the program increment, but like my team might have only had a very small part in those 2 or 3 buckets. And so when you get into planning, it's like all of this capacity you have to do all this stuff doesn't matter because it's not related to the epic rocks that you're trying to work on. And so you end up spinning cycles, like you said. You just end up like having no work to do, or you have too much work to do, depending on which bucket you're in, or because your dependency isn't going to be able to be completed, the entire feature scrapped, even though you could work ahead on that feature, like in the way that I've described, because you understand the way that the system's going to lay out. But I think that a lot of the capacity loss is just not thinking in terms of that. One, you can take an effort and work on a like work in inverse order, where you work on the dependency after you work on the actual usage of the dependency, because you can do that. It's just, you need to have people who understand how systems work and how to separate out components and how to abstract things to do it. But sorry, now I'm just rambling.
No, I'm listening and then I'm
like,
reflecting.
yeah, but I think to keep people busy, like I said, it's really, is to understand things that are coming up and to have fallbacks. And what enables a lot of that is, if it's a big project, is to understand, is have enough out there where people can extrapolate on what they're going to need to do in the future, and allow them to actually build out future capability now behind abstractions or feature toggles or whatever. And then when the time comes, it's just a flip the switch, and you might have some rework, But in the gross timeline, you're going to get things done quicker overall. Because you might have the thing is, if you can get 80% of your development correct without a dependency in place, right? But you'd have no other work to do in this cycle. If you work to that 80% point, the next cycle comes up, your dependency gets filled in. Now you've got, an additional like 20% of work to do that you might not have had to do if you had the dependency in place in the first place. But over time, in a grand scheme of time, you're getting things done faster.
Yeah.
Because you're parallelizing. I mean,
What's DC? I don't understand what the last Twitch thing is.
DC bad thing. I don't know. Hi. Do you do
reaction?
reactions? No.
Yeah, so I'm figuring things out. I guess I'm learning as I go. So
Yeah, I guess it depends on your scope though. But if you're having teams sitting around doing nothing because their dependencies aren't in place or whatever, find out what the next important thing that they should be working on is and get them working on that.
or
let them work ahead, because they should be able to work ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe most developers aren't capable of that. Maybe I overestimate people's ability to.
No. If like 80 or 90% of these teams are composed. I think it's comprised. What's the right grammar?
Comprised, yeah.
Of senior developers, like they've demonstrated that they can do it, right?
Well, or they've been around long enough. There's a lot of senior developers that can't hold their own. Like, they're given specs, they code to a spec, and then they move on. There's a lot of people who can't take ambiguity or to extrapolate upon something without a spec.
I'm one of those people.
Yes, I do just fine as long as I know what the high level vision is or what the goal is and the why. Like it's like you're trying to accomplish this thing. Okay, well, what am I gonna effectively need to accomplish that thing on my end? Now, I don't have those dependencies in place, but here's a rough idea of how they're going to mock it. Here's how I could model it internally. Okay, so I'll just make a mapper here to fill in that gap when the time comes, and then I can adjust stuff around. Okay,
so
build out 90% of your code or 80%, and then just.
One thing is, like, how do you keep people busy that are sitting on their hands or that has capacity, right? And it's like, what the hell is else? I'll just give them some infrastructure to work on. It's not related to the business domain that I'm still trying to figure out, right? So like some platform stability patterns and logging and security and maybe some client code for publishing and subscribing to some cloud platform. Yeah, you can do that, right? But then it's like, well, you have some dedicated like site reliability engineers or a dedicated group of techs that domain really probably is better allocated for them, especially because they're the ones that are going to be maintaining it, right? And so it's just trying to figure out how to be a good coach strategically in regards to like providing a strategy and the appropriate resources that you have for the specific work that you need to get done without there being, while trying your best to not create negative value, aka rework.
Yeah. The other question you can ask is, why the fuck did you give me a team that doesn't need any work right now?
But that goes all the way up the chain.
Yeah, it's their stupidity doesn't mean that, like, why are you dealing with their. So this happened at my last gig too. It's somebody comes to me and goes, "All right, Sean, you're the lead on this team. Do you need more people?" No, we do not need more people. We are way under capacity. We have too many people as it is. We can't organize our or we our communication channels are frayed if we get any bigger. It's like we need to keep this tight and lean because that's what the work we have. Then the next day, it's like, okay, here's 3 people.
Yep.
Did you listen to me? Did you listen to a word? Do you even care? No. And so now you've got people working well under their capacity to work, which for me, I hate. I hate being under capacity. It's the worst thing in a job ever, is to not have enough work to do. Like, if it's like,
Well, I start feeling useless. It starts attacking my self-esteem. Like,
yeah, that's exactly how I feel. It's like I don't
it's like what do you call those dogs that it's probably a couple of different breeds, but they're bred to herd, but
yeah,
you know, everybody's
yeah.
at their 9 to 5 and the dog is just at home doing
Border
nothing. The
collies.
dog starts going crazy.
Well, never at one a border collie, even though I love them.
Yeah, like I feel like I'm built like that. Like if I'm sitting in a cubicle and I have no work to do, like I read a lot already. Like I don't. It may be okay for the first couple of days for me to just surf the internet, but I don't want that to be for like 2 weeks. I start getting like anxious and
Yeah,
like frustrated, and then all of a sudden I'm like sending an email for a notice of termination. I've done it before.
yeah,
Like this isn't how I want to spend my time.
yeah. That happened to me. So like the sprint, we did our planning session, and I go, we're gonna have this entire work set done by well Tuesday because Monday was a holiday, and so I go, it's we're gonna have this all done, and people were kind of like, yeah, okay, but then we had it all done, and it's like, all right, now we've got like 7 days left in the sprint, but see the development capacity is well above QA capacity, so it's like we can't bring more work in because our actual throughput is hosed. So I'm sitting idle, and then when we get into spikes which don't require like QA, then I get it compounds upon itself because now not only do you not have work to do, but you've got work that's kind of completely open ended that doesn't have really a good defined end to it. And if you can, like I said, extrapolate on things and build out like models in your head like in crazy ways, it's really like it takes a toll on you. So I don't know, and it's been a sucky week. But I want to have like enough work where I just literally just keep chugging away at it, and it's all just like build it and go.
What's your view on I'll say it and then like I'll go into detail if you're not familiar with the term. What's your view on walking skeleton?
You go into the term. I haven't heard that one before.
So uh I'm used to deferring integration details until I'm finally confronted. Usually more data trickles in so that I can make a informed decision, right? A better or a higher quality decision when I'm eventually forced to make a decision, but I don't want to make a premature decision very early. So that's been like my thought process or my practice. Uh, but this passion project has taught me some consequences of that philosophy, right? Where maybe you do want to entertain some integration detail considerations and map that out. Maybe not full throttle, but maybe there's some value in having a general understanding of just enough, right, in regards to integration. Business logic, integration details, right? So like the business workflow or business policies, Azure infrastructure and security and all that other stuff. What type of database, NoSQL, SQL, blah, blah, blah. All right. So what I'm experiencing and what you have observed is like death by a thousand paper cuts with this passion project. Like that's what it is, right? There's subtle rework that I didn't realize I would have to do because I always thought that I had a clear separation of the main logic from like integration details, but apparently it wasn't decoupled enough. And so the notion of a walking skeleton is started at the consider the integration points at the beginning of the project as you're building out these business policies or developing them, automating them. Um, but they don't have to be like in depth. They can just be hello world, with your Azure integration and with your database and with your Azure Key Vault or whatever. But over time, it just evolves and it you have dependencies over time that again evolve throughout the development life cycle or throughout the development life cycle of whatever product you're trying to build. um, and so you start it early so that you make discoveries, have discussions, and come up with resolutions sooner rather than later at the end where now you're trying to like get serious about all these integration points and there's things that you didn't consider or there's constraints by security folks or whatever. And as much as you wanted to decouple domain logic from all these other cross-cutting concerns, it wasn't done perfectly, and now there's some rework based on the way that you structured your code and what it and how it calls or what the ceremony is between your domain logic and your integration stuff. And so there's some rework in there. And so the thought process is, well, with this walking skeleton, and it's Googleable, right? Let's start the process early and just refine it over time. It's not perfect, but it does introduce some hello world integration points that we could build upon. I'll just pause right there.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me.
Have you ever got caught with the philosophy or with my personal philosophy of, yeah, we're just going to defer this until we have to deal with it, and then you end up hitting some rework because of the integration details that as much as you thought you engineered this to be loosely coupled, it wasn't loosely coupled enough, and now you have to do all this rework?
No.
Okay.
Well, I don't. I guess I don't know. Maybe. Um, like I don't think hard about the integration details. I don't know if a concrete example would help, um, but I mean, like I like the idea of, well, let's say you're going to use messaging between two systems, like spinning up a messaging service that literally you're just using ad hoc queues and you throw it on there as your first step. You have no security. You don't consider at all about capacity of that server. You don't like things. All you're doing is getting the integrations put together. And then over time, you start to build out the capabilities around that integration, adding security, making sure the capacity is there, making sure that availability is there, all of the actual non-functional parts of it. That all makes sense to me to build that capability out over time. But to just like build out the structure and then integrate everything at the end.
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah, see, no, I don't like that. Yeah, and that maybe that goes back to the idea that why I hate unit tests, because almost everything is what fails in the integration. It's never like most of the time. Like your core code is probably fairly solid. You might have a 2 or 3 small bugs here or there in business logic or rules, but that's never going to be like 90% of the time, that's never going to be the issue of what your code is. Like it's all in the integration, and stuff didn't arrive when you expected it to, and something's not available and you didn't code this exception path correctly, or
There's a precedence of client calls that need to take place in order for
Yeah.
something to occur. Like, you try to optimize things, uh, and the consequences, one server is returning a result before the other server is prepared to take it, or something to that effect.
Yeah. So it's, to me, that's the issue, is that it's almost all of the pain is in integration. So it's like, that's what we should be getting to there pretty quickly. um, and testing at that level, because that's where things come out. I don't think the stuff comes out at the unit test level very often, at
You're
all.
not a fan of unit tests.
I'm not. I think, well, again, I think large component tests, okay, yeah, there's some of those. Like full component test, end to end, this thing receives an input here and goes out this end at a component level. I
Yeah,
think we've discussed
integration.
that before. No, that's like a component test, and that could be considered a unit test if you consider the entire component
To me,
a unit.
I mean, I know there's different schools of unit tests. To me, if it's only hitting business logic, regardless of how many calls or how many publicly exposed methods you're hitting, to me, it's still a unit test, right? I understand that that's not the definition of unit, but
It depends on how you define
if
unit.
if there's unit tests and integration tests, and it's not hitting a web server or database or anything like that, I'll call it a non-integration test to make people happier, right? But to me,
Yeah,
it's like, so for example, the the test is calling a method on the controller. That method is what's exposed, and it's probably going to do. There's probably going to be a lot of business logic across several different classes that get executed, and it's going to eventually return a result. To me, it's a unit test because you're unit testing that behavior of that controller based on that specific method that's exposed on that controller. I don't
yeah,
care about what else, how many things it touches. To me, it's still a unit test.
yeah,
Right?
yeah. Because if you have one garbage mapping in that, it doesn't matter how solid the internal like unit tests were around. You're gonna have crap in, crap out.
To your point, I use unit tests as a sanity check, as to 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 call out issues with my model. But I mean, real talk, like 90% of my unit tests eventually become throwaway, or they don't get ran again.
Yeah.
In my personal like projects.
Well,
But
that yeah, that
they help me develop my model. They do.
yeah, that lets you think, but then their value might be gone after that. So why keep them around?
But my integration tests, no, they stay.
Yeah, yeah, and that's
My,
that's the thing is so like if you're building a like a hexagonal service, right, using ports and adapters or whatever, and if you test everything at the ports and adapters like layer, I mean
I trust
that makes sense to me. Testing a specific method within that is as an implementation detail is stupid, but that's how they seem to want tests written, or seem to be how tests are supposed to be written.
my integration tests ultimately become automated scripts for setting up um, for setting up a system quickly without having to manually do it.
But anyways, get back
So
back to
so
your
it becomes a
original.
tool, right?
Yeah, back to the original point is it doesn't matter like how strong the core of your thing is if the downstream or upstream stuff when you integrate isn't matched up correctly. It's gonna be borked, and to get you want to get that stuff figured out sooner than later and do full integration testing, because that's where the pain is probably going to be, because you're dealing with other people. You're dealing with communications. across to other people usually, or you're dealing with like foreign knowledge of some tool that you don't quite fully understand that someone else built that now you need to wrestle with. So yeah, the walking skeleton thing, that makes total sense to me. Integrate early and often, and test those integrations early and often. Yeah, versus build out a component in a vacuum and try to plug it in. No.
Okay.
Yeah. Theoretically, it should work, but it's like just
I
putting
had
all your
to
problems off to the end.
select private chat because I didn't want to deal with that spammer.
Oh yeah, he stopped now.
Because I didn't know how to like ignore or boot. There has to be it has to be supported, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. And so I had to click on the private chat just so I wouldn't be distracted. Oh, good feedback. I think I've learned other perspectives. That's it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm not gonna work on my table for next week, so
I'm gonna try to get in about 3 to 4 hours this weekend. Cause I'm getting phone calls, man. Like I'm getting like voicemail, man. Hey, it's been a while since we talked. How's your app coming? And I haven't returned the phone call yet. So
yeah, you got all people all excited, and now you're letting them down. Better get on it.
I'll blame it on my insomnia. All right, it's been real.
All right.
See you.
All right.
Bye.
See you. Bye.
See you, Gambler. Take care. Bye.